What's a simple concept from your field of study that the average person doesn't seem to understand?
Some people learn faster than others.
College taught me a very painful lesson about the difference between being smart and being a quick learner.
I was a TA in graduate school for classes in engineering. I remember this one student who came to almost every office hours and worked through the problem sets and material to make sure she understood it. She ended up with a low B high C and apologized to me for taking up so much of my time and not getting an A. I told her that she is the type of student I like to teach because she wanted to learn the material and I could see consistent progress. I also told her she is going to be successful because that kind of discipline to teach yourself new material is not common, and to not get caught up with the grade but focus on the fact that she is learning it. I will always remember her because of that. I hope she is doing well.
That was very kind of you to give her that kind of encouragement. You should look her up and find out how she's doing.
Orthodontist here. Making braces tighter does not make the teeth move faster. Have patients daily asking me to make the brace even tighter because they can take it and finish faster as a result. Teeth move quickest and most efficiently with very low, sustained force application. It's like trying to get yourself out of quicksand. Yanking with all your might leaves you in exactly the same place, but slow, continuous, gently force gets you to where you want to go. Usually, after explaining this, they shrug as if I'm trying to pull one over on them and proceed to ask me to make it tighter next time.
I wish you had told my orthodontist this. Over 20 years later, and I still feel like that man was a sadist.
Even if he didn't tighten too much, the wire can still snap. I don't have scars from braces mentally. I do, however, have scars. Waking up with that damn wire deep inside my cheeks. How the fuck did I sleep through that?
Communication isn't what you're saying, it's what the other person is understanding.
The amount of times at work that I'd read public-facing communication that someone wrote and say, okay, yes, you know what you're saying, I know what you're saying, but can you help me understand how an average person without our level of context would possibly understand? It's about your reader or listener, not about you. Don't just think from inside the walls of your own brain. Make at least some basic attempt to put yourself in theirs.
Technical writing is the most underrated college course. I'll have colleagues ask me to proof their document, and my first question is often, who is your audience? Context matters.
Librarian here. If you want your library to have new books, you must be prepared to get rid of the same amount of old books. Because I have to dispose of books secretly, as the public just don't seem to realize that we can't house a collection that grows by 10 or 100 of thousands of books every year. For the pedantic, I said amount rather than number for a reason. Books and archives are commonly measured in linear meters or kilometers, as that tells us how much storage space is required.
I was talking to a school librarian and this one drove her nuts. By law, Texas, the books had to be destroyed and not donated or sold. At the end of the year, she would let teachers know that if any books from a certain shelf went missing, she wouldn't notice. Edit. I'm not sure if that was a state or district policy.
People are not made to live forever, and modern medicine, while amazing, cannot make miracles happen. So many times we have a patient who is on a ventilator and unable to be taken off. Plus, their kidneys are shot, and they are requiring continuous bedside dialysis. Plus, their heart is failing, and they are on 2-4 continuous infusions of medication to make it function properly and prevent circulatory collapse. That is multi-system organ failure. Even if we can get one system back, the chances of a meaningful recovery are very slim. If I turn off any of my machines or a bag of one of their meds runs dry, they're gonna die, because they are on a huge amount of life support. But the family still will be thinking they're gonna walk and talk out of the hospital. And even if they do live, a lot of them are going to get a trach and feeding tube and then go on to live the rest of their lives in a facility where they still need 24-hour care, where they may or may not still be ventilator dependent, where they likely cannot speak and definitely cannot eat or drink anything by mouth. Some will never for the rest of their lives be able to safely eat or drink by mouth again. Many will be incontinent and bedbound and likely never regain their strength back. If you ever have a family member in the ICU on life support, think long and hard about it, because a lot of what we do to sustain life is literal torture.
As a nurse, I have tried to impress upon my family how much I do not want this for myself if the situation arises. It's good to have these conversations, and especially if you're older or sicker, put them in writing.
Blind people having vision. Only something like 10% see nothing. Not black, nothing. The rest all have varying degrees of vision impairment, all for different reasons. A lot of our students have light perception, at the very least. People are always surprised by that. Edit. Comments proving my point, LOL. It's really difficult to wrap your head around as a sighted person.
Have people who've lost one or both eyes, I mean total removal, not just their vision is lost through damage, written or talked about this? As somebody with vision, the concept of experiencing nothing in terms of visual input is so foreign to me, it's inconceivable. Most like me probably presume it's like having your eyes permanently masked where no light arrives, and it's just dark. But the way you state it suggests to me there's just no input whatsoever, like how we do not detect radiation, microwave, radio, through any input.
This happened to me about a decade ago. I got so dehydrated by food poisoning that it took 4L of IV fluid to bring me back up. I remember at least a minute or so where my vision system just shut down completely. I could still hear things but could not see, and it wasn't black. It was nothing, as though eyes didn't exist. There's really no way to make it relatable. It's kind of like a TV being switched off versus a black screen. But of course that analogy is imperfect. Eerie and unpleasant sensation if you're, like most of us, used to seeing things.
That actually makes sense. You reminded me that I have actually experienced nothingness in terms of vision when I lost consciousness due to low electrolytes after a plasma donation. I'm also remembering standing up too quickly from a horizontal position and having low blood pressure. I could feel myself sink to my hands and knees but couldn't see or hear. Maybe it's similar to that.
My patients are 95%, why would you call an ambulance for this? And 5%, why the fuck didn't you call an ambulance for this sooner?
My dad fell and broke his hip in the middle of the night. Around 10 a.m., he called me because he couldn't manage to get to the toilet. He then didn't want the ambulance called because he assumed he would get down the stairs on his butt and be pushed to the hospital 10K in an office chair. He wasn't actively dying, so why call an ambulance? I called his GP, and she sent an ambulance over. There's no way he would have gotten downstairs without making things much worse.
I ran on a lady who fell in a Walmart parking lot, got back into her car, drove herself home, and then called her son to help her inside because she couldn't get out of the car. Son is the one who called us. She did all this on a very broken hip. Old ladies are some of the toughest I run on.
911 dispatch. When you call me and I ask you questions, I don't need a life story for each one. A simple yes or no will suffice. If it doesn't, I will ask you to clarify.
The most important things we need to know are where you are and what's going on. Most of the 911 centers have people that take calls and people who do dispatch. If I'm getting info from you, it goes right to a dispatcher who sends police, fire, and medical. My continuing to get info from you doesn't slow that process down. It enhances getting you the right help.
You may know where you are, and God may know where you are, but if I don't know where you are, you're fucked. Just give me your location for fuck's sake.
There's two main reasons that when you cook a restaurant favorite at home, it doesn't taste as good. The person who made the dish used all of the things your doctor told you to avoid. It's full of butter and salt and all that good stuff. When you substitute healthy options, it doesn't taste as good. Or at least it doesn't taste the same. The people who made your dish have done it hundreds of times, or thousands of times. You can get very good at a dish cooking it at home for yourself, but mastering a dish takes a kind of repetition that is rarely seen outside of a professional kitchen.
Whenever the topic of restaurant food comes up on Reddit, their explanation from people working in kitchens is always along the lines of butter, more butter than you could possibly imagine. I decided to experiment by cooking vegetables in butter, which I don't normally do, and to be fair, they were much tastier. Then I added a truly ludicrous amount of butter, several times what I'd consider a reasonable amount. Suddenly, everyone loved them.
Physics teacher, scientific literacy is pretty poor in general. Lots of people struggle to interpret a graph correctly. Lots of people struggle to distinguish between variables, like velocity versus acceleration. This is perhaps more niche for science education than the real world. But you'd be amazed how many people think skydivers stop completely or even shoot upwards when they open their chutes. Lots of people don't appreciate the difference between an absolute change, +10, and a proportional change, +10%. This has huge repercussions for all sorts of real-world problems, like their savings for retirement, house price, or debt.
Information technology, IT, involves a lot of Googling. A very relevant skill requirement is simply that we know how to Google efficiently and aren't afraid to poke at things to see what they do. Seriously, if you don't know, learn some basic browser search skills, like putting a word in quotes to make it required, using dashes to exclude certain words, using after date to filter by date, and so on.
I feel like Google broke this function in recent years. If I search for Afghani Muslim, as in the fabric, I'll get results for Afghani Muslim, the religious identity. Even if I don't click, "Did you mean Muslim?" using the dashes or quotation marks is working for me today, but I've had times that they don't work for whatever reason.